Hey y'all, welcome back to the ranch. I'm Jared Paul, and today I completely messed up my first ever landscape planting. I have 7 river birches and a few Thuja occidentalis and one maple that volunteered itself from seed. This planting's a little less than 2 years old, and it was looking outstanding, but it was amongst a whole bunch of trees that I was watering inside, waiting for it to be warm enough to put out, and it just happened to need just a little more water than everything else, so it completely dried out. All the leaves wilted. The thuja still look great, but the river birch looked absolutely terrible. So luckily, there are some healthy little internodes coming out already. So I'm hoping that by defoliating today and pruning, that by next week when I put them outside, they will have some rebirth and resurgence and totally recover. I actually did put off pruning this planting, so it might have been time regardless. So hopefully I could save it. But that's what's coming up on today's episode of Jarhead Bonsai. All right, y'all. So here is the said named river birch planting, and I'll always call it a river birch planting, even though there are a few thuja down there. All of these have been grown from seed, December 2008, or excuse me, December 2018. And right here, you're not gonna be able to see it because it's basically a stick with a couple of withered leaves. But there is a baby maple right here that volunteered itself, and it has, it's come out, leafed, gotten some issues, fallen off, come back a few times. So it's like a little survivor. So I feel like it'll come back, and if it doesn't, it wasn't intended for the planting, so I don't care. So what I want to do today, I'm not going to touch the thuja. They look nice and young and vibrant and healthy. So I'm going to let them look like little bushes underneath these ginormous birch. So I tried just doing this earlier and getting all the leaves to fall off, but that's not going to work. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to prune, and then if there's some nasty leaves left after the pruning, I'll just defoliate then. So anyways, I put a few pieces of Connecticut quartz stone in there because actually 10% of Connecticut's crust is made up of quartz. So it's a really common stone for Connecticut. And I find it pretty in all different shades. There's, rose quartz, you get that nice pink shade, you have the really translucent shade, the one that's more like an opaque egg color. So anyways, it's one of my favorite stones. So this one has the river birches for Connecticut, the thuja for Connecticut, and, well, the maple that I didn't invite for Connecticut, and then these 3 quartz stones. So here we go. What I'm going to do is if there's any cross branching or something growing back towards the center of the landscape, I'll cut that out. Otherwise, I'll maintain about this height because I feel like with this round of a pot, I'm not going to bring it down to here, and then it just looks like a few sticks, in a nice big pot. So I want it to look nice all year round. This is one of my favorites, the original landscape. All right, so here we go. I'm not biting off of Nigel Saunders on the bonsai zone. That just came out naturally. Anybody who knows my channel knows I go and boom, boom. Boom, boom there. So the outside leaves, the newest growth, doesn't look too shabby. So I'm thinking that everything's going to be fine. One day of dehydration isn't going to kill this whole thing. And if it does, I'll hate myself. And I won't even tell you because I don't want to tell anybody when I fail. When I saw this the other day, I had a heart attack. I instantly threw it in the sink and was freaking out. Gave it a great soak, checked for bugs. It wasn't bugs, it was me. But you know, bonsai broskies, you know, it's tough to take care of all these trees, not lose track. You got indoor, outdoor, dormant, not dormant, tropic, subtropic, conifers, hardy evergreens. Oh my gosh. One of my birch leaves fell directly into my hard cider. So, I guess, whatever. I'm becoming one with the birch tree right now. Cheers, y'all. I feel like I'm going to prune this up and just get a better look once there isn't so much stuff going on, and then I'll do more like ornamental pruning after that. See, this is a nice branch coming out the base of here, and that's the beauty. If you know birches and you appreciate birches, you know that they have a lot of they have a single trunk or sometimes double, triple trunks, but even after that, like very early on, they will kick off some nice leaders. They'll be very vertical, and then those will have the dominant branches where, just like on here, this leader up here, its branches are reaching straight up. So that's natural here. And if you don't know, you don't have birches in your area, the best thing about a birch, in my opinion, is it kicks off this awesome white flaky bark, and like in the winter when it loses all of its leaves, and so does everything else, you could be driving down a back road or highway, and the most striking thing is the white bark of a nice birch tree. So I didn't even know that there were so many varieties before I started growing them, but this is the river birch. I also have Korean birch. I have one white spire birch that was attacked by spider mites, and if it dies, I'll be very upset. So that's in recovery. I have some sweet birch, and that might be all the birch I have, but that's a lot of birch. So right here we have this dominant branch growing across, but I almost feel like you need, even though it's a forest planting or a landscape, you need like a center branch or just off center branch to be that apex. So I have to decide whether I'm going to let this tree be that guy or this tree be that guy, because this is a really nice branch, pretty centered, and I think I just made up my mind I'm going to leave that guy. So what we're going to do is I'm not going to touch this branch at all. So that becomes the apex, and that's really the height that I want the planting at. But the reason why I'm leaving it is if I don't disturb it at all, it has potential to have the most muscular growth, and then this will thicken up and it'll become my leader, and then the this 1/3 of the planting will become the apex, you know, and everything else will build off of that. So I just made that decision because this tree is really, really nice up here up front. So that would be the tree that I want to be there. I don't want this as my front. It's just two, they're all like boom, 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 all together across the front. This right here, it's like, hey, I'm the leader, and then there's a bunch of guys behind them, you know? And then you can get up in that forest planting. So that's how it's gonna be. So that's why we're leaving that. I feel like once you decide your apex and your height, you could just do a profile prune and then go in for like the finer pruning afterwards. This one, you know, it starts early on, but it was like really tight to the trunk, and it was so thin it would just take away from not only that branch but the actual trunk. So I'm taking it out. It's really close to the front. Well, the front when you circle it around. So you don't want anything unsightly around the edge of the pot. Okay. So right here, I'm not sure if you can tell, but we got this lower one going right into this one. Now, typically I would say, okay, raise the canopy and take out the lower branch on a tree. But since it's a birch and everything else has a nice vertical flow with a slight, angle going away from the trunk, and this one's taking a horizontal approach, I'm actually going to take out this one entirely. And that's specifically because this is a birch. Typically, I like to get more weeping branches and do tropical canopies. That's just where I lean towards. I like to do a single trunk into 3, and then those split and turn that into a nice canopy, depending on how the trunk line is. Now, I don't have a ton of older trees, but I already know, like, based on the disposition of the majority of my 2-3-year-olders, that's where I lean towards. So anyways, with the birch, I'm taking a different approach. Now this branch is growing entirely inside. So do I want to take this one out, which could be like a third vertical one of this inferior tree? Or do I want to take this lower branch out of this dominant branch of the dominant tree? That's the question. I feel like the dominant tree has enough branching, and it won't take away from it if I take this one away. But if I take this branch off of this little guy, it might wither up and die because it won't have the vigor. But it also won't look like much. Take this, and I'm just going to take the whole thing. And then this I'll take back to, I took it back to a node that's facing to the outside of the pot. So even though this branch is coming back towards the center, I don't feel like, that's a cross branching branch that needs to be removed. It can still be recovered and have a couple that come out here and work with the canopy, the overall canopy in the future. So down here, I have some relatively new growth growing directly up, and it's growing against the flow of these 2 older branches here. And I actually like that they're coming vertically, but then aiming outside, where this one's pretty much just going straight up. So I'm going to take that one out. And I'll nip the tips of these guys. There's actually a couple coming off right at the end of this one, and they're not working for me, so I'm taking them out. Okay, so it's not the leader. However, one of the more dominant trees towards the center has a couple of branches. You're good. So right behind here, it's not the leader, but these branches are really interfering, so I'm going to take them out. This landscape was really pretty when it was so full. I just took out 3 branches on the interior there, make it 4. They were growing directly in towards where my apex is going to be, and I have no need for that, so I just took them out. Honestly, I wish that I didn't. I never wish that I messed up my trees, but I wish that these weren't all wilted up right now for you to see, because I was looking forward to this pruning. The tree looked absolutely epic. It was full and gorgeous, and for like, less than 2 years on these trees, they had a lot of branching. It was looking nice. I was proud of it. So hopefully you can imagine it like I picture it, because it really looked great. Otherwise, you'll have to wait a couple of months, and then I'll show you the progress that we've had in this nice landscape. All right, so we got a couple more growing back towards the middle here from down low. So I'm going to follow that rule. If it's down low and growing up and outward, cool. If it's growing towards the inside, I'm going to take it out so that we allow sunlight to get to pretty much everything. So right here, I have this branch is reaching out, and this one's reaching up. So I want the reaching up. But I don't think I'm going to take this whole branch out. I'm just going to nip it right where there's between the first and second of the new growth, first and second buds. And right here I have a nice branch that will reach and complement the planting and stay away from this tree. Then the one behind it is growing directly into it. So I'm going to pop that one off. So what I'm doing, I'm not petting the tree like a weirdo. What I'm doing is trying to get these wilted leaves just to kind of fall off with the slightest bit of abrasive action. And what that'll do is it'll expose the sun to the new inner nodes, those new buds that want to kick back and grow. So if I was like, say this one, I know it's not going to work with me. If you start yanking on one and the branch is bending with it, just drop it. You don't want to mess the whole branch up. I'm curious as I start pruning this up, the overall profile, so. Yeah. If you didn't even see these dead leaves, I don't believe that you would think this tree had any issues. I think it had plenty of energy down the roots and it's good to go. So that's positive. Okay, so right here, I've got from the inside, this branch going right across it into this tree. So I'm going to take that one entirely out. When I was learning landscaping and ornamental pruning on full-size trees out in Colorado, I was going for my master's in psychology, and this guy took me under his wing. He hired me off of Craigslist, and he was a retired landscaper. There was like a construction landscape guy who would see the vision of a nice, really wealthy person's home, and then plant trees accordingly and make it all look absolutely amazing. Great aesthetic, and cutting off sight lines with neighbors, things like that. That's where he specialized. So, a landscape architect, that's what he was considered. So then after he retired, he maintained, a handful of his clientele, and he just didn't feel like doing it anymore. So he didn't need a full crew, so he just hired me. So I would listen to my textbooks, and I would do all this work. And if there was work that I didn't want to do, I would hire a kid off of Craigslist, like hauling off the stuff that I was pruning, things like that, the weeding, the stuff that I really wasn't interested in. And so anyways, it was a lot of fun. So that's how I learned to do these things. And then I was bouncing from one small house to another. That's what intrigued me about bonsai, because, now that I have a 5-acre ranch, yeah, granted, I could fit any tree I want out here full size, but depending on where we're going to be, we never know where we're going to be. Laura and I, we like to travel. Franny is a ballerina. you know, so potentially she could be in a different country, and it's not like we're not going to follow her. So we could be in a tiny little apartment in London or Paris here in another couple of years. So you want to be able to take the arts with you. So that's really where Bonsai came from. I'm at the ranch now and I love it, and I have my tree farm and all that. But, you know, Bonsai can be taken anywhere. And I think from what I've read, that's actually where it came from. You know, initially the larger size trees or like the garden trees came from China and the art form of the pruning and all of that. And then Japan adapted it along with a lot of the other cultural aspects. And because Japan is an iota of the size of China, they started miniaturizing these trees. So that's, you know, from my understanding, that's exactly where it came from. So appreciating a tiny tree is just as cool for me as appreciating a huge, like 75-year-old tree in your yard that you're hacking an 8-inch branch off of to develop this nice canopy. You know, it's all the same in my opinion. But I digress. I think we're almost there, y'all. Take out this one more inside branch. Another inside branch is growing back against the trunk. See, this one's growing inside, but there's not much to this one. I feel like this actually complements it a lot. Right, another inside one, inside one. Oh, I don't think we like this one, guys. Comes from behind and then wraps around and comes up. Negative, you're gone. Nah, interior growth, no thank you. We'll keep this because that could make it interesting, and I'll take it back to there another time maybe. But for now, we'll do this. Let's take this out. Don't like it. Oh, so if anybody is still watching or listening, if I miss your comment and and I don't respond, it's not because I don't want to. I always try to do 100% of my comments, but for some reason, since my phone updated, I'm getting like 50% of my messages of people commenting and asking questions, and I'll come across them when actually another one shows up, and I'm like, oh shoot, this one's been here for 4 days. So trust me, y'all, I don't ignore anybody. That's part of it for me. I love that aspect is the camaraderie and bouncing ideas off of each other, answering questions, asking questions. We're all out here, all different levels and all different aspects. So I think that's one of the coolest parts for me. So just wanted you to know, if you ask me a question I didn't answer, it's because I didn't see it. I'm not just gaffing you off. So I'm going to leave the one here that's growing vertically and take the one that's coming up above it right into it. I don't know. I think I like it. Looking pretty good right now. Probably let it grow until fall. Maybe do a little pruning then, because they grow quickly. It grew quickly its first couple of years, or a year and a half. So I'm assuming that it'll grow even faster the next. These don't want to come. All right, y'all. So that's going to do it for today's episode of Jarhead Bonsai. Take a look at the young landscape planting of the river birch and the Thuja occidentalis. They're just going to be allowed to grow for their second year of life. All these have been grown from seed. It's been a lot of fun. One of my favorite trees, absolute favorite species, these birches. So I pruned a little more off than I thought I was going to, but I think it looks good, and it's got a nice start for the future. So I'll give you the update soon. And from Jared Paul and my family at the ranch, I hope y'all are staying well and enjoying yourselves. Take care, y'all.